Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to New Zealand General Election Party Debate 2017, hosted by TV33. I'm your hostess, Cindy.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am your hostess, Rebecca.
Welcome. As you all know, 2017 is a very special year for New Zealand. The widely anticipated New Zealand general election will be held on the 23rd of September. By that time, millions of New Zealand residents will vote for our new governing party.
Each vote is very important because it will directly determine the country's policies in the upcoming 3 years.
Before we get started, I'd like to briefly introduce the host of this party debate tonight, TV33. As the leading Chinese media in New Zealand, TV33 has been playing an irreplaceable role in the cultural communication between China and New Zealand, and it has been committed in promoting friendship between the two countries.
On the 1st of July 2017, Guangxi satellite TV programs started broadcasting on TV33 with rich and exciting programs passed to the Chinese community in New Zealand. Also, Guangxi Satellite TV Sea Silk Road program started broadcasting from 1st of July 2017, broadcasting time from Monday to Saturday between 6 and 6:30 p.m. TV33, as the pioneer and the only New Zealand local TV program producer, its programs are now broadcasted in the new Silk Road program on Guangxi Satellite TV channel. The programs are People and Iris on the Way. Since the launch of the program, the audiences from China have had a huge response. A huge promotion of New Zealand's outstanding humanities, geography, tourism, education, technology, investment, environment have all been successfully introduced to 1.3 billion people in China.
Not only this, Hunan satellite TV programs will also be broadcasted on TV33 in August 2017. Hunan Satellite TV is China's #1 satellite TV. There will be a lot of exciting programs broadcasting on TV33 so that New Zealand Chinese audiences can easily watch excellent productions from China. TV33's programs are also about to be broadcast on China Hunan International Channel. TV33 is working on developing more updated programs to make New Zealand better known in China and contributes to New Zealand's tourism, culture, education, and investment.
In the year of New Zealand's general election, by hosting this big general election party debate, TV33 aims to provide a platform for different parties to express their political views, as well as give the Chinese community an opportunity to gain a more in-depth understanding of New Zealand's political system.
We would like to note that this general election party debate will not only be broadcasted on Freeview TV33, it will be promoted on channels and platforms including China Guangxi TV station, Xinhua News Agency, the state press agency of China, China News Service, the second largest state-owned news agency of China, Tencent.com, one of the largest internet companies in the world. Through TV33, we are passing on the voice of New Zealand to the world.
We would also like to give our thanks to our co-hosts and sponsors. Thank you all for your contribution and support.
We'd like to thank our co-host, New Zealand Inner Mongolia Chamber of Commerce, Chaoshan General Association of New Zealand. Thank you for your support.
Also, we would like to thank our sponsors, Elite North Harbour, One Pure Water, and Black Eagle Security. Thank you all very much.
We'd like to thank our friends in the media industry who supported this event, NZME New Zealand Herald, Maoli Television, and our Chinese media colleagues.
Special welcome to Laura Maxwell, the Executive Commercial Officer of NZME and reporter of Married Television, who are here to witness this event with us.
Tonight in the debate, we have candidates from the following parties: New Zealand National Party, Honourable Judith Collins, Minister of Ethnic Communities.
New Zealand Labour Party, Mr. Michael Wood, Member of Parliament for Mount Roskill, spokesperson for ethnic communities.
The Green Party, Ricardo Mendes March, candidate for Mount Roskill.
United Future Party, Mr. Damien Light, Party President.
ACT Party, Mr. David Seymour, Leader of the Party, Chamber of Parliament for Epsom.
The Maori Party, Mr. Wee-Tex Kang, candidate of the Maori Party.
New Zealand People's Party, Mr. Rocha Naria, Leader of the Party.
Conservative Party, Mr. Leighton Baker, the Leader of the Party.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Now I will briefly introduce the procedure of tonight's debate. First, we will decide the order of making the opening statements by lucky draw.
After the opening statements by the party representatives, we will follow with the debate. The topics of free debate will be announced later, and we will make sure the candidates and audience hear the topics at the same time.
And then it will be the question session, where each candidate has an opportunity to ask one and only one question to one of the other 7 candidates on the stage, and people who are the person who is being asked must answer the question.
After the question and answer session, we will proceed with the candidate summary and the end of the debate.
Now I'd like to read the debate rules. Please make sure to speak within the required time. Each candidate is given 3 minutes for giving your statement. In the free debate session, each candidate should not speak more than 3 minutes.
We will ring the bell to remind you about the time restriction. When the bell rings once for the first time, it means you have 1 minute left to finish your statement. However, when it rings twice and for the second time, it means your time is up.
In the free debate session, the candidate who stands up first can speak first, just after the previous speaker finishes.
And please don't make any interruptions when the other candidates are speaking.
Let's welcome our colleagues to bring the lucky draw box to the stage. And let's put our hands together to welcome the 8 candidates to come up to the stage. Who comes up?
Once you have drawn your number, please show the number to us and to the audience. Yeah, and the audience, please. Thank you.
And who's our lucky number 1?
Each candidate, please be seated according to your number.
Yep, you can be seated according to the numbers on the seat.
Okay, thank you. Now, let's start the debate.
Now each candidate can make their opening statement in order for no longer than 3 minutes. In this section, you can discuss your governing policies, focus of work, as well as your party's strengths. When the bell rings twice for the second time, it means time's up.
So when the bell rings once for the first time, you have 1 minute left. Yeah. Okay, first up is candidate number 1. Welcome.
Yep, we have Judith Collins from the National Party.
Well, ni hao and good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, both as the National Party's candidate in Papakura, but obviously I'm also the Minister of Ethnic Communities, a role that I've now held twice in terms of 2 different terms. It is certainly the Chinese community is an extremely important community to us. 170,000 New Zealanders claim Chinese heritage, including both my husband and my son. So to me, this is an issue that is really important for us because Chinese people, New Zealanders, are the 3rd largest ethnic group in New Zealand. The big issues for us are law and order, issues around transport, housing, business, how to keep business being one of the best, or New Zealand being one of the best countries in the world to do business. And in my role as Minister of Revenue, I know that we've got some great things happening. Cash flow is the big issue for businesses. How can we keep people still making money, still making profit, and still paying taxes that pay for our housing, for our hospitals, for our schools? And so we believe that that is very important. Law and order, we've just announced earlier this year, 1,125 more police staff coming to you, and 236 sworn officers in the Auckland region alone, plus the extra staff that go with that. So it's really important to us. I've been the Minister of Police twice, Corrections twice, Minister of Justice. Law and order is something I know affects everybody, particularly people who are part of ethnic minorities or are immigrants, particularly to New Zealand. And it is something where often immigrants feel that they are being targeted, and particularly people who are in businesses, small businesses, and who feel somewhat vulnerable. That's why we have to have very strong law and order policies, and I'm very happy to be part of a government working with our partners in government to make sure that those are delivered on for you. So one of the issues that we've just dealt with recently is youth crime, and the Prime Minister announced some new changes on Sunday. Those are particularly around dealing with some of the very small, about 150 very young, very violent offenders who are targeting particularly people in shops and businesses and service stations, people who are really out of control and probably mostly have been most of their lives. They're going to be sent down to Wairuru, which if you've been there, you'd know it is quite a long way from anywhere, to the army camp, and they're going to have a last chance. And the last chance is they go to prison if they don't work in that particular setting. And I actually think that's a good setting because it's very much about targeting the worst young offenders and giving them a last opportunity to turn their lives around. Because the last thing we want to do is to put people in prison if we can keep them out. And the way we can keep them out is to stop them committing the crimes in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Judith Collins. Next, we will have United Future Party, Mr. Damien Light.
Good evening, everybody. So my name's Damien Light. I'm United Future's party president. I'm also the candidate for Botany. So thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight. I want to talk a little bit about who United Future is and what we stand for. So United Future is a party that's very much focused on the future, particularly our future generations. We believe that it is the role of government to create an environment where everyone has the opportunity to thrive. No matter who you are or where you've come from. Our future in New Zealand is the best place to live, to work and to raise a family. Where our environment is future-proofed against climate change, and our rivers and our lakes are clean. We want to lead the charge in terms of electric vehicles by giving people grants to help them transfer from petrol vehicles, but also help businesses build charging stations. We want our water resources to be have a fair but comprehensive royalty scheme on them, so that our water's not just been taken overseas, leaving us with nothing. And we can use those funds to make sure that our environment is clean and green. We want an environment that is fair and that works for everyone, not just the privileged few. We will have an income sharing policy that enables families to combine their income for tax purposes. 300,000 families we can help, some of them up to $9,000 a year. We want our students to leave university without being burdened by debt. So we've got a zero tertiary education fees policy. And we want our living costs for our students to match the reality of the cities that they're living in. Proper investment in our citizens and our young people means that they can adapt to the changing work environments that we're seeing. As technology and innovation happens, jobs are changing, and we need to invest in our young people to make that happen. So we want a future that has a compassionate approach to migrants, where we recognise that migrants are people, and that we support them and help them become part of New Zealand. We have a sensible approach to immigration with a 10-year population plan, where we address and we take advantage of the opportunities that we're faced by having these migrants who are coming into our country and bringing so many wonderful new foods, new ideas, and we want to help migrants in this country to get jobs or to start their own businesses. And we can do that, and we know the migrant community is looking out for it. So we've got some sensible plans, some pragmatic plans, and our policies are all focused on the future generations. And United Future has achieved a lot in the past, and we can do it again. So thank you very much. Hopefully tonight you'll hear a bit more about some of our policies. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have candidate number 3, Mr. Roshan Naria of New Zealand People's Party.
First of all, greetings to all the candidates and wish them good luck. And Neha, and good evening to all of you. First of all, I'd like to explain you, New Zealand People's Party is for all peoples of New Zealand. Just not one community, not for farmers, not for labor, not for union. It belongs to everybody. And the policy we have announced 3 policies as a party. One policy on immigration. On immigration, we have announced that we will open the parents category again. Number 2, on immigration, we will allow the last member of the family, which used to be there. Third thing is international students, which commitment was made by the government, present government, that this will be pathway to residence, which has been betrayed now. We will meet their commitments. Right. And then we'll make an easy visitors permit, so the people can come, the families can come as the visitors. And law and order, we have announced a policy on law and order. One of the first thing we announced that we will put 2,400 more police into the police force. I'd like to give you some statistics. As the nation said, they will put another 1,000 police officers. That will bring back to the, population has grown in 9 years. That will bring to the same number what used to be 9 years back. We'll bring to the police number 1 police officer for every 450 New Zealanders. Second thing, we will put more mobile police stations. We'll put 50 more mobile police stations. So there's a problem, a requirement, say today might be in Dannemora, next day maybe in Wellington or Hamilton. So mobile police station can go quickly, move to those places, can act as required. Next thing we'll do it, self-defense. Every day you read in the newspaper or any news, big news come, even if you look at the news today, someday police is chasing some criminals. Some shops have been robbed, some other people. So we'll make self-defense not a crime anymore. And we will act very, very harsh with all the serious offenders, including the young people. And last policy we have announced in housing, if you look at what happened in the last 9 years, houses gone up double in price. And new people, first home buyers, it's impossible to buy them a house. What we have said, we'll give every person, first home buyers, only first home buyers living in Auckland, 100,000 free, interest-free loan for 5 years, which will be part of their deposit. And people living out of Auckland, we'll give them 60,000, respect to anything, interest-free for 5 years. And I give you the cost of that money. It's only $150 million a year. I can give you the statistics anytime, only is $150 million, which is not a lot of money when you got $80 million budget. And that will, in a house, that will make the people to have their own houses, 60,000 families. That's what I'm talking. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Mr. Michael Wood from New Zealand Labour Party.
Ni hao, daja hao, and thank you very much for putting on this debate tonight, TV33. Ladies and gentlemen, can I acknowledge all of my fellow candidates as well as the people who have sponsored tonight's event, Chaoshan General Association, the Inner Mongolia Racing Association as well. These sorts of events are very important. I want to start off by saying this. I believe that China has a very, very good system. Once every 10 years, there is a peaceful transition of power from one president to another. And here we are, 9 years into the national government. It's about the same length of time. And so what the Labour Party wants to put to you tonight is that it's time for a peaceful transition of power in New Zealand. For the very same reasons, that because after a long period of time in government, you need some fresh ideas, some fresh energy, and a bit of a new start to deal with the challenges and the opportunities that the country faces. I'm very proud to be the MP for Mount Roskill, which is the most diverse electorate in all of New Zealand. More than 50% of people in our electorate are born overseas, including a large Chinese population, of which I'm very, very proud. And the vision that we have in the Labour Party, that we've always had, is that people in New Zealand, if they put a little bit of work in, should all be able to live a good and happy and prosperous life, no matter what their background. And we stand for a strong and fair and stable society. And so what are some of the things that we think that we need some fresh ideas around to achieve that this election? Well, number one is around housing. We know that for many people in our community, the dream that you'll be able to own your own home is slipping away. I was very lucky. I got my first home in Mount Roskill with my wife about 13 years ago. But I'm concerned that my 3 young boys will not have the same opportunity because it costs $1 million to buy a house in Mount Roskill these days. And I worry that that will make our society less stable and give less opportunity for people to be successful. It's about having a strong economy, taking advantage of things like One Belt, One Road by building a strong relationship with China and taking advantage of opportunities in the China Free Trade Agreement which Labor negotiated. It's about finally unlocking Auckland's transport network. And I'm very proud to be Labor's transport spokesperson because over the last week we announced our plan for modern light rail in Auckland, just like many growing Chinese cities have at the moment actually, to make sure that people can move around our city and we can move freight around to serve our businesses efficiently. Finally, I just want to comment on Labor's new leader, Jacinda Ardern. She's been a long-term friend of mine. She's exciting people all over New Zealand. And I know that she will be an excellent, strong and decisive leader. She's the person who can be the next Labour Prime Minister who will build that strong, fair and prosperous society that we all need to be successful. Ladies and gentlemen, I look forward to the rest of the debate and the questions to come. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for that. Next up, we have candidate number 5, Mr. David Seymour from the ACT Party.
你好，大家好，我的名字 David Seymour，我是行动党党魁。Thank you. Thank you. I'm very proud to stand here for the ACT Party, or Xingdong Dang, and tell you that I've listened to the people here, and the number one issue for the Chinese community in New Zealand is Zhe'an. And helpfully, the ACT Party is the strongest party on law and order. Not just talking about what we will do, but what we've actually done. The ACT Party has brought New Zealand 3 strikes, making sure that the worst criminals are not out on the streets, not getting sent to Waihuru, they are behind bars. And there's more. We can extend 3 strikes to burglary because nobody deserves to be invaded in their home and nobody should have the sense of violation of people breaking into their house and stealing their stuff. But we can't just be tough on crime, we have to be smart on crime. And the ACT Party's next idea is that we're going to teach prisoners to read because education is the key to living a law-abiding life. But it's not just being tough on criminals and educating criminals, it's about standing up to the New Zealanders, some of them in this room, standing up for the New Zealanders, rather, who are persecuted and face discrimination because of who they are. And when New Zealand First, who aren't here tonight, told Melissa Lee and Kanwal Bakshi, Asian members of Parliament who deserved to be there, to go home to their home countries, I was the only member of Parliament who stood up and said they should apologise, that New Zealand First were wrong to persecute New Zealand MPs based on the colour of their skin. And that matters. It matters because criminals target people when they see politicians saying it's okay. Criminals target people when they are stopped at the lights in Green Lane and attack their cars, telling people that it's okay to whack their car with a broom, to abuse them, to yell abuse, to push people out on the streets. All of that happens to people from ethnic minorities in my Epsom electorate, in part because some politicians like to say that that's okay. Well, the ACT Party stands very strongly for a New Zealand that is a nation of immigrants, that is strong and diverse, and that treats all people equally. That's what the ACT Party stands for, And I hope
Thank you
that
very
when
much.
you cast your party vote this election, you'll be giving it to the ACT Party, Jingdongdang.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much. Next up, we have Wetex Kau from the Maori Party.
Hi everyone. Thank you TV33 for inviting me to this debate. At the Māori Party, we acknowledge our Asian cousin from 5,000 years ago. So we are an inclusive political party. So I am going to present my speech in a bilingual context. 大家好，我叫姜威德，我是 Botany 的候选人。我们的党魁 Marama Fox 进了医院，所以今天晚上不能来，所以很抱歉。我谢谢 TV33 请我来演讲。我们跟毛利人5000年前是一家人，所以我们毛利党欢迎同胞来新西兰。Look, everyone talk about law and order, but no one's ever done anything about it in the last 9 years. The members of our community currently live in fear. 我们大家的同胞提心吊胆，不能好好的生活。They've been robbed. 我们被人家抢了。Our cars been broken into. 我们的车也给人家偷了。We're too scared to report crime. 我们不要生事，也不要去报警了。Even if we do report crimes, the New Zealand police tell us to go to the local station because it is a small matter, non-urgent. 就算你报警察，警察也不来了。We've been told to go home. 他叫我们回家了。We've been told we can't drive. 他跟我们讲我们不会开车。And Dr. Yang, 杨博士 last week told us that crime is coming down and National is doing a good job, and that's a lie. 杨博士上个星期跟我们讲，这个国家的治安越来越好了，他是骗人的，国家党也是骗人的。On the eve of the 2017 general election, the national government's drawn in $60 million to send young offenders to boot camp. 大选前，国家党跟你讲，他会给6000万把小孩子送去兵营，太迟了，大家同胞，你同意吗 ？Finish.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have candidate number 7, Ricardo Menendez March, candidate for Mount Roskill from the Green Party.
Kia ora, can you hear me? Yep. Cool. Kia ora koto. I first want to acknowledge the mana whenua of this land, Ngāti Whātua, but I also want to pay tribute to those of you who have a history of migration. I'm a first-generation immigrant from Mexico, and I really stand in solidarity with our migrant communities here in Aotearoa. The Green Party has been in Parliament for over 20 years. And we're making 3 commitments to you this election. We're committed to cleaning up our environment and our rivers. We think that it's unacceptable that 2/3 of our rivers are too polluted to swim in this country. When our brand is 100% pure New Zealand and our tourism industry relies on this, the national government is basically selling lies. We're also going to take action on climate change. Our best indicator on whether we're doing enough to combat climate change is our emissions. And under the past 9 years, we've seen our emissions rise. Tackling climate change can be done in really practical ways. We can build better public transport infrastructure, and we can insulate our homes so that not only are we taking action on climate change, but actually you are not having to face hundreds of dollars of electricity bills every winter. And lastly, we're the only party that has made a commitment to ending poverty in New Zealand. We're going to do this through raising wages. We're going to raise the benefit as well. But actually, we're also going to build, and we're going to build with Labour and the next government, thousands of state homes. We're actually also the only party committed and saying that house prices need to come down, because when the government is building so-called affordable houses, these are going for $600,000. I wouldn't call that affordable. And I also want to touch on the recent scapegoating that our migrant communities are facing. The Green Party is the most migrant-friendly party. We are committed to reinstating family reunification. we will decouple worker visas from employers, and we will stand for migrant workers' rights. We don't believe in blaming migrants for the housing crisis or traffic congestion. We're actually going to put real solutions to combat those issues. So, the Green Party has one of our brightest candidates standing in Botany, Julie Yu, who ran in the local body election. You can give us the party vote, but if you're in the Botany electorate, I would highly recommend you also talking to her about the issues that concern you. Please give your party vote to the Green if you'd like to see action on those 3 issues, because we're the only party committed to taking action on those 3 things: cleaning up our environment, climate action, and ending poverty. Kia ora koutou katoa. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Leighton Baker from Conservative Party. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation to come and speak with you tonight. Thank you to the other parties that are represented and the candidates that are here. Thank you very much. I represent the Conservative Party, and the Conservative Party is the one party that's standing up for families. If you're looking at why crime is happening in New Zealand, you need to look at what is happening within the families. It's all very well building more prisons and locking more people up, but you need to find out what is causing crime. Why are young people getting involved in it? Why are they abusing drugs? Why are they abusing alcohol? And the reason is they feel disenfranchised or disconnected, and they don't have a strong family unit. The Chinese community is very, very strong on family, and we see that in the way the Chinese community is very lowly represented in crime statistics because you have strong family unit. But unless we teach other people in New Zealand how to have strong family units, the crime is going to continue to go up. It doesn't matter how many police you have, doesn't matter how many boot camps you have, crime will go up unless we intervene in families. And so we believe in bringing relationship training into schools, so we can teach the young people of New Zealand how to build, maintain and develop great personal relationships. We think that is a key thing because it attacks the problem at the core. We've heard about boot camps. We actually think it would be more interesting to take young people that are really struggling in society onto farms. There they would learn horticulture, agriculture, they'd be away from home for a year, they'd learn a whole lot of skills. So you're not saying stop, you're saying try this, you're re-educating them. The other thing we can do to intervene with young people is actually through schools. School is the one government department that is most effective in reducing crime because young people engaged in education don't commit so much crime. The problem with schooling is there's a lot of young people out there that are hands-on learners, kinesthetic learners. And so we believe in getting them out early at 12 years old, 13 years old and putting them through trade training so they have their skills used. So instead of getting bored at school and going into the out into the community and committing crime, they're actually still engaged, and that will prevent crime. When it comes to crime, just remember, prevention is way better than cure. And if we can re-engage with people and get them doing something productive, we're going to stop them getting involved in crime because we want people part of our community. I'm a builder by trade, and part of the Conservative Party's policies is bringing up practical solutions to the problems we face. So in regards to Auckland's transport, we've got a whole program called Supermax, which would save Auckland $1 billion per year in transport fees and means for $70 a month you could travel from Albany to Pukekohe all month for just $70. That's a great scheme. It's been priced out, it's been worked out, and it will work. So that and a whole lot of more other things is what you can expect from the Conservative Party. Just remember, we're the party that is looking at solving the issues from the root cause, not putting band-aids on it, and we look forward to getting your vote this election. Thank you for your time.
And now we will proceed to the highlight of tonight, the free debate.
In the free debate session, each candidate should speak for no longer 3 minutes. And when the bell rings once for the first time, it means you have 1 minute left. And when the bell rings twice for the second time, it means time's up.
In the free debate session, the candidate who stands up first can speak first, but it must be after the previous speaker has finished speaking.
Please do not make any interruptions when other candidates are giving their speech.
Now we will announce the topics for debate.
Our first topic for this free debate session is immigration. At the time of the election, all parties seem to announce tightening of immigration policy. As we all know, immigrants have made great contributions to New Zealand. I'd like to ask all of you whether immigrants are really important to this country or not. or immigrants are just tools used by political parties for getting on the stage of power. If you do not deny the importance of immigrants, why repeatedly tightening immigration policy?
Well, I'd just make the first observation about, do the political parties see immigrants, and in particular the Chinese community, as tools for getting political power? And I just want to go along the row and say, who have I seen at Chinese New Year for the last 3 years? Conservative Party, never seen them. Green Party, never seen them. Māori Party, great speech, never seen them. Michael Wood from the Labour Party, he shows up. I disagree with Michael Wood, but he shows up. Rushan, never seen him. United Future, never heard of him. Judith Collins, the National Party does show up to Chinese New Year events. It's always a good time of year for me because half the events are for Gay Pride Week and the other half are for Chinese New Year, and I have to alternate very quickly between the two. That's what we do when we actually value a community. We go to the events that that community supports, even when it's a busy period. When it comes to the question of immigration, the ACT Party is the party that has always been strongly in favour of immigrants and their rights. And again, you go along the line. The Green Party values immigration. No, they don't. Until recently, they wanted to cut immigration to 10,000, scapegoating this community and many others. The ACT Party stands up for the rights of immigration. We believe that immigration makes us stronger together. And when it comes to the question of parental reunification, we only have to look at our values. We believe that people should be able to move freely around the world, but they should not be able to put a burden on the taxpayer. So we say, if you're going to have an immigration system that allows you to bring your parents to New Zealand and reunify families, that's fine. We would give you a 10-year renewable multi-entry visa, but it's a visitor visa, meaning that you can bring your parents to New Zealand as freely and as often as you like, but they must have their own private health insurance and they must have their own means to survive without relying on New Zealand superannuation. You can come here, but you can't depend on the New Zealand taxpayer if you're in the family reunification category. That's fair. And I just want to point out that I don't just get up here and say these things. They're in my book. And I'm the only member of Parliament who's actually written a book. Some members of Parliament haven't even read a book in the last 11 years. And if you want to find out more about ACT's policies for immigration and that we are the consistently pro-immigration party, read my book. 谢谢.
Hi everyone. I just like to say that I was at the New Year celebration, not on behalf of the Māori Party, but with my family. 我去那个新年的那个庆贺的那个活动，可是不是代表我的党，跟我的家人一起去。Another thing, since you did a bit of a circus, what I want to know is that if you're so inclusive and you love immigrants so much, why did you get rid of your co-leader? 我刚才跟他讲，如果他这么喜欢我们的移民，为什么他的副党魁辞职了 ？Kenneth Wang 辞职了。At the Māori Party, we value immigrants. We believe that we share the same whakapapa with you guys. With me actually. 我们毛利党认为5000年前我们是一家人，所以我们是欢迎移民的。The National Party National Party has closed the family reunion category. 国家党把家庭团聚关了，会关2年。我们在毛利党如果进了国会，会把它再开放。I think the Labour Party wants to reduce immigrants by 20 or 30,000. 工党要减移民2万到3万。 我们毛利党要加2万到3万的那个。我们同胞来了，就希望后来的不要把秩序搞乱了。So at the Maori Party, we believe that we believe in better immigration management. Thank you very much.
Hello. First of all, I'd like to say the New Zealand People's Party is the only party who has specifically announced the immigration policy. People talk about ACT, United Future, National, they're all together. You can see they have worked together for the last 9 years. And what they're doing it, something goes wrong, they can't manage their own policies, they can't manage how to do the housing policy, law and order policy, and they blame the immigrants. You know, there's 14% immigrants in New Zealand. They call Asian immigrants, I'm talking about Asians. And how much contribute to the economy? More than 20%. So each one of us contribute nearly 1.5 times more than what we are worth, what other New Zealanders do it. Right? So what I want to say is that immigrants are not taking their share. They are giving more share. I said quite often, jokingly, you get 50% immigrants here, we can feed every one of you. We don't need anybody else to work. So it's not that point, what I'm saying, we want to, okay, what I said specifically, people need to understand what the culture of Asian people. Most of the Asian people want their parents to live together, right? And what National Party has done, stop that policy. There's a called temporary, right? Whatever may be. And they're part of, it's supported by ACT, United Future, and Maori Party. Otherwise, they would have said, no, you can't do that. You can't be in the government. They all had enough votes to do that. So, New Zealand People Party has specifically announced a policy, and I can assure you, if we are part of any government, whether it's a national labor, we'll make sure that our policy is implemented. If they don't implement our policy, we won't be part of the government. This is an undertaking from us, and this will happen. We won't say, do something, say something. This is the difference between, going to be the difference between us and the other party. People are talking about, we'll do this or we've done that. Just going to function. I've been to function. I got pictures of showing the Chinese function. Even one of my supporters has a function, picture with the Bill English. That doesn't mean that anything. But we have specifically announced the policy, parents category, last member category, student category, and visitor permit. You know, that's what it is, New Zealand People's Party. Thank you.
So I just want a couple of points of clarification. United Future is extremely pro-immigration. We always have been, despite what Mr. Seymour might have said earlier. So, in fact, Peter Dunn, who's our party leader, is actually the Minister of Internal Affairs. And so one of his jobs he gets to do, which he really enjoys, he gets to sign all the citizenships, to approve all the citizenships that go through. And it's one of his favourite things to do, and he's regularly talking about how exciting it is to welcome all of these new people coming into New Zealand, to become New Zealanders, because so many people want to come and live here, because we've got a fantastic place to live in New Zealand, and so people want to come. So we're extremely pro-immigration. We always have been. End of last year, a lot of the parties were jumping on the anti-immigration bandwagon. We had people coming to us saying, hey, you guys need to get on board. Everybody's, saying, let's stop immigration, and we said no. Our policy has always been to support immigrants and to allow immigrants to come into the country. We need immigrants. I've heard reports that immigration brings in about $2.5 billion a year into New Zealand. So economically, it makes good sense. But all the culture and the experiences that immigrants bring into New Zealand is really important. And we love, as New Zealanders, we love travelling overseas as well. We love going to Europe and to China and to Asia, going and seeing the world. And so we want to be part of that. And so closing our borders is absolutely the wrong thing to do. So we're absolutely opposed to that. We're quite pro helping immigrants who come into this country. We do think we have a tendency to let people in for their degrees and for their money, and then we just kind of abandon them. We want to help people adapt to the New Zealand culture and understand how we work here. We want to help people get into jobs, not just in Auckland, but in the different regions as well. So we've got things like we want to set up a website so international people, before they even come to New Zealand, can look for jobs and we can match them for their skills. So when they're coming into New Zealand, they've actually got realistic expectations and we can give them jobs in Auckland or around the regions as well. We're absolutely for the family reunification. It's really important. If you're bringing your family here, you want to bring your parents over. And why wouldn't you? It's just wrong to not do that. So United Future is absolutely in support of that. So we told National when they put the brakes on earlier this year into immigration, we said to them it's a bad move, do not do it. They didn't listen. They've since changed their mind, which is great. So yeah, United Future, absolutely, immigration is really important to us. Thank you.
When I spoke before, I talked about the value of diversity in our communities and the fact that I'm proud to represent Mount Roskill, which is the most diverse community in all of New Zealand. It was one of the reasons my wife and I chose to live in Mount Roskill, because we wanted to live in a place that had people from different cultures, from all around the world, with all of the diversity, with all of the new ideas and the ways of doing things that brings. That makes New Zealand a stronger country. And I actually think I can look around the stage, and I think that everyone here on the stage would agree with that. We've then got the question of what our immigration settings are. And here's the fact. There's not a single country around the world that has open borders. Every single country makes decisions about what its immigration policy should be in that country's national interest. Some countries sort of set a hard number. Some countries have a point system a bit like we do. But either way, every single country thinks about what is the right level of immigration for our country at the moment, given the challenges and the opportunities that we have. And so that's the debate that we're having. We're not having a debate between anyone saying no immigration and anyone saying open doors. Everyone's saying somewhere in the middle. So where does the Labour Party stand? Well, what we've got in New Zealand at the moment is record net migration of around about 72,000 per year. That's about the highest it's been since the 1870s. What the Labour Party thinks is that at a time when we have a serious crisis around housing, a serious crisis around transport, and a desperate need to catch up on that infrastructure, we don't quite think it makes sense to keep running it at those record levels. So what we say is that if we make some changes to the system, ease the level down to about 40 or 50,000 net per year. Now that's actually higher than it was most years under Helen Clark, and higher than most years under John Key, in fact. It's just easing it down from the current record levels a bit. And here's the thing about immigration. It's not just about what happens to a person at the point they come into the country. Every person who's an immigrant becomes a resident or a citizen of New Zealand. And what we want to see is that every immigrant who comes to New Zealand and becomes a resident or a citizen has access to good transport, has access to good housing, and all of those things that we need. And so our policy around immigration is about having a good immigration policy that supports a diverse community, but looks after those issues that we've got to catch up on in terms of our infrastructure in New Zealand as well. It's a balanced and moderate policy, and as a Labour Party person, I'm very proud of it, and I think it's the right way forward for our country. Thank you.
Well, much is being made about immigration at the moment, and primarily it's because we're no longer losing 40,000 New Zealanders every year to Australia, which is what we did under Helen Clark's government. And we're no longer doing that. I think last year we lost 1,200 as opposed to 40,000. And so the immigration numbers coming into New Zealand are not much more than they were then. But the fact is, because we're not losing people, that's actually put a bit of pressure on infrastructure, and whether it's housing or transport as well. And that's one of the reasons that we're doing so much work around transport and housing at the moment, and building roads and extending railways and doing the work around housing that we need to do. But let's be clear here. Immigrants coming into New Zealand are also the people who, by the way, help to build those houses, whether they're funding them or building them. And all you have to do is go around some of the areas of Auckland where there's a lot of housing going on and being built, in my electorate, in the Botany electorate, all around the place, and you'll see a lot of people who, when you talk to them, they're immigrants into New Zealand. So let's not see immigrants as a problem, let's see it as actually part of the solution. And certainly that's something that we've seen in the regions around New Zealand, where many regions around New Zealand have told us as a government that actually they want to continue the immigration policies that we have because it works for the regions and it works for Auckland. We're all either immigrants or children or descendants of immigrants, whether our families came here 1,000 years ago as a tangata whenua, or whether they came here 200 years ago, or whether they came here 5 years ago. Nobody can say we're not descended from immigrants. And the one thing that brings us together is a love of New Zealand, a wish to be here, and wanting to do the best for New Zealand and be good citizens. That's what we need in New Zealand, people who appreciate being here and being part of New Zealand and are grateful to live in the best country in the world.
So during election year, immigrants are used as political football, and they will be blamed for the housing crisis, our mental health state, and congestion. You know, it's all good and fine for the national government to pay lip service to the fact they love diversity, but let's do a bit of a fact check here. Under the national government, they've got family reunification. They put a stand-down period of 3 years for new residents to be able to access their student loans. And during the national government, we've seen so many cases of migrant worker exploitation. We need a government that actually doesn't just pay lip service to this and works towards changing the law so that migrants have a fair go in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So the Green Party, now that we've actually changed our immigration policy, and I will acknowledge what David Seymour said, you know, our immigration policy may have not been the best last year, but because we have people from migrant backgrounds running as candidates this election, we've given input, and now we are standing with you. What we're going to do is, we're going to, like I said earlier, decouple the worker visa from one employer so that migrant workers are not faced with exploitative conditions. We will reinstate the family reunification category. And actually, we believe the stand-down period with student loans needs to end because new residents need to be able to access education. New residents shouldn't be forced into low-wage jobs that actually kind of lock them into these conditions. So let's stop scapegoating immigrants. Let's talk about the real solutions and how we're going to sort out the housing crisis. It's not enough to say that immigrants are taking up our houses when there are 30,000 empty homes in Auckland that are left land banked, accumulating value. This housing crisis is a product of the national government's policies, and actually successive governments to an extent. We need to actually have bold solutions. Let's build state houses. Let's put a capital gains tax. As a matter of fact, the Green Party is the only party that still wants to put a capital gains tax to give everyone a fair go in New Zealand at owning their own home, and if they're renters, that they're not faced with increasing rent prices. The Green Party is the only one that will not pay lip service, that will genuinely stand with immigrants. And just to answer to David Seymour in the last few seconds, David Seymour's policy is about also not allowing kids of immigrants to be able to access education until they've been taxpayers for quite a few years. I think that's actually not really migrant friendly. So, yeah, well, look at the spin-off article. So thank you. Cheers.
Well, thank you for your time. Yeah, I'm the son of an immigrant. My dad came out here when he was 21 and never left. And I employ an immigrant, one of the guys on my building team, immigrated out this year. He's a great worker. He gets paid the same as all the other guys I employ. And so we recognise what immigration does for New Zealand. However, I'd just like to say this, and I may not be popular, but I'll speak the truth anyway. We don't invite someone to come and stay at our house if we haven't got a bed for them. And New Zealand has got an issue at the moment where we're shy about 20,000 houses. The problem we have at the moment is if we have 72,000 extra people come in each year and we haven't got enough houses for them, where are they to live? And this is not anti-immigration or anything. This is just saying basic math says there is nowhere for them to live. So there's a very, very simple solution. If we put a cap on our population for just 6 months, we would actually solve the housing crisis. We're building 8,000 houses every quarter. So in 6 months, we'd build 16,000 houses. We'd virtually catch up in our housing in just 6 months. And then we can actually plan ahead for our immigration. The reality is, it's been noted recently that 40% of New Zealanders' jobs are not going to exist within the next 15 years. So in 15 years, what are those 1.5 million people going to do for a job? How do we as New Zealand train 1.5 million people to do something different in the next 15 years? And so we need to look 15 years ahead, and we need to look to the immigrants that are coming in and see what skills have they got that they can transfer to us so that New Zealand as a whole can move forward over the next 15 years. So our policy is, 1, have room for people when they come to live here. 2, have the skills so they can stay here, enjoy and worthwhile and retire here. And 3, make sure that New Zealand is a place that encompasses all peoples because we all bring value to New Zealand when we come. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all for your speeches. Now for the second topic, we will be reducing the time to 2 minutes so that everything will move along a bit quicker. So the second topic is crime, and the question is, over the years, crime in New Zealand is getting worse. Many years ago, we didn't have to lock our doors at night. Nowadays, breaking into cars, burglary, armed robbery, and other forms of crime are increasing in frequency. The police are almost unable to do anything due to this huge increase in crime. Even if the criminal is caught, sometimes the police are forced to release the criminals. I would like to ask the candidates here, what do you think of this, and how can we make New Zealand a safer country again?
Thank you. I did address this earlier in my speech, but in reality, we've got to find the cause of crime if we're going to deal with it. And so I said it earlier, the cause of crime, a lot of it is family breakdown. If we can introduce good relationship training, we'll stop that, reduce it anyway. Then we have to have interventions to stop people getting in, so give them something else to do. So it's not just stop something, here's something else. And that comes through early trade training for young people in schools. That comes through officers going around looking for truants. If people continue down a life of crime, then we need to look at these boot farms where young people can go and learn new skills. If they continue down a life of crime and they end up having to go to prison, we want to introduce a 3-stage sentencing program. And it works like this. First stage is work, so the offender is sentenced and they must work. They must engage in that work before they move to stage 2. Stage 2 is education. So every offender gets their own education plan. A lot of offenders are fecal alcohol syndrome. They can't read, they can't write, so there's numeracy and literacy. Other offenders, it may even go all the way up to getting a doctorate in something. But every offender would get their own education plan, and they need to complete that before they move on to the third stage, which is open prison. And the reason this is important is because the offenders must take responsibility for their actions. They're the ones that need to be responsible to move ahead and be allowed out again. And it shouldn't be the fact they just sit there and get out when they finish their time because they haven't changed. We need to give them the skills so they can participate in society and actually make a real contribution. And we can do that if we think about it, if we put a plan forward and we program it. That's our plan for reducing crime. Thank you.
Well, the Conservatives were very happy then because they've done all those things. One of the things that I find really irritating is when people say that nothing happens to these people in prison to help them. We have, in our very first year in government, we actually doubled the amount of alcohol and drug treatment for prisoners. We've now got 8,000 prisoners accessing over the year, any year, drug and alcohol treatment. We have education available. We have every single prisoner able to do work now in prisons. All of our prisons are working prisons. And as a minister, I have visited almost all of our prisons. I can tell you they are not full of immigrants. I really can tell you that. What they are is it's homegrown. And when I look at it, most of it is gang orientated. So we have around 50% of prisoners are either gang members or they're gang associates. And when I've looked back at these families, they are gang families who are crime families. Now I understand not all families who have been involved in gangs are involved in crime, but actually a lot of them are. And if you look at it, if you look at family violence, which is around 60% of people in prison because of family violence offences, it's against their own family members. And understand this is that it's families make the hugest difference for people in life. When we're looking at young people, if you take them away, you do various things with them, and you send them back to a family that is violent, abusive, doesn't look after them, unfortunately, those kids have a very little chance of being any better in life. But when I look at it, the problem is people not taking responsibility for their children, and when their children do need help, not accessing it or not understanding that it's their role to do it. Governments, no government can actually change someone's life. But what we can do is help them make better choices and help them change their own lives. And we can certainly encourage parents to take responsibility.
Hi everyone. Well, I do agree with the Conservative Party's view of educating our young people. 观众大家好，我们刚才这位候选人认为年轻人应该教育他们，我是赞成的。Nevertheless, the national government's been in government for 9 years. Sorry? No, I only joined the party 2 months ago. 他跟我讲，他讲我们的那个党已经执政9年了。我跟他讲2个月前我才参加那个党的，所以跟我没关系的。Well, basically, nothing's been done. Asians, like our community, we've been robbed, we've been told to go home, we've been told we can't drive. So what is the solution? I say bring back the Maori warden. 我认为应该用毛利警察跟我们的民团一起把我们的治安搞好。谢谢。
So United Future's been working with National the last 9 years, and we're quite proud of some of the work we've done. Oh, no, I'm proud of the stuff we've done. One of the things we're really keen on is increasing drug and alcohol treatment in our prisons, because we know that about 50% of people in prisons have drug and alcohol addiction problems. So we're really proud of that. We need to do more of it. We don't think we're doing enough, but we're doing some more. We also want to move some of those drug and alcohol addiction programs further up. So we're addressing them when people are younger. Addressing the causes of crime, preventing a crime before it happens is a much better way of doing it. There's a lot of our focus. Absolutely, we need to make sure we've got sufficient police force out there, especially community cops. I think that's one of the issues. People need to feel that they are being looked after. But I think for us, a big part of it is early intervention. Looking at our youth, our young people who are on a bad path, heading towards a path of crime. One of the things that I've seen work very successfully is engaging young people in their local communities. Well, I used to live in Beach Haven a couple of years ago, and we used to have an issue with people going around graffitiing walls, vandalising, causing all sorts of problems. So one of the community groups I was involved with, we went around, we worked with the local communities, the schools, local artists, people like that, and we painted murals. Some of them are like local historical scenes, some of them are just local wildlife, that kind of thing. But because we engage with the young people with it, through the schools, and just through volunteers as well, it created some connectedness. People recognised that this was part of our community. And we've never had issues with vandalism or graffiti in those areas anymore. So I think a really important thing is working with communities. Trying to address everything from Wellington is difficult. We need to do better to empower communities to address the causes of crime in their area and work with those young people who are troubled, who have got problems, and it might be their families or whatever it is, get them into a good education and get them into a good job and help them. So early intervention is a much better solution than just locking them up and putting them in prison. Thank you.
Yeah. New Zealand People Party is one party who has specifically announced the policy on law and order. We have announced the policy in two items. One is what we're going to do immediately and what we're going to do long term. Immediately, see, we have to stop, like we're going to increase the police numbers by 2,400. And we're going to put more mobile police stations. And we're going to get very tough on the young people. And the biggest thing we're going to do, change the self-defense. You know, people goes to the shop, they're not scared, because the shop owner cannot do anything. Because he knows if I'm going to hit the fellow, he cannot hit back. So they're not scared. And you look at National Party or ACT or whatever, United, they've been together for the last 9 years. Crime in the last 4 years has gone up by 10% every year. You can look at the statistics. They can say anything, but it has taken them 9 years to talk about that you're going to reduce the crime. And I can tell you today, if you give us a vote to New Zealand People Party, 150,000 votes, I can assure you that we will reduce the crime by 50% minimum in 5 years. This will happen. And long term, we are talking about rehabilitation. If we do the rehabilitation, there will be not many criminals left in the society. That's the only way to do it. Not just talk after 9 years in being a government, we'll do this, but let crime go up, and go up. And still they say, oh, we can't do that, we can't do that. Thank you.
I just want to start with a brief audience survey, which is to ask, does anyone here think that it's safer now than it was 9 years ago? Okay. Well, we've got two out of the audience, okay? We have had 9 years now of a national government, and I want to come to Judith's defence here, actually. It's a national government, but supported by United Future, supported by ACT, and supported by the Māori Party. And most people, particularly in small business and our ethnic communities, don't feel safer than they were 9 years ago. They feel less safe. And that's something we need to take seriously. In my electorate, I have seen shop after shop knocked over, burgled, people assaulted, and the impact on people's lives is absolutely horrible. So all of us as politicians and community leaders need to take responsibility for doing something about that. There are two key Labour policies I want to talk about. The first is getting more community police on the beat. We've been on about this for years. The number of police in Auckland in particular has not kept pace with the population growth. I often ask small shopkeepers in Mount Roskill, when was the last time you saw a police officer walk past your shop in your shopping area, keeping an eye on things, watching out for people who may be up to no good, and fixing up those problems? You never see it anymore. We have now got a late injection of new police, thank you, Judith Collins, but it's come very late in National's 9 years. Labor would bring in more community-based police who will be there in the local town centres, local police kiosks, where you as a small business person or you as a person who's got a concern about some people over there can go and talk to a local cop to get some help from them. The other key thing we've got to do is actually get to the root causes, and a lot of people have talked about this. And I just want to reflect on National's recent proposal about sending the 150 kids down to Waiouru. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. I don't think it will. But here's the dumb thing. That's 150 kids who have already committed aggravated robberies, already committed sexual assaults, already potentially killed people. All of our focus should be on getting to those kids before they hurt people. That's what a smart government that wants to reduce crime would do.
Thank you.
And we know that the policies that Labor's got, good health, good education, good jobs, will help with that.
So I want to acknowledge that there is real fear and hurt in our communities because of the targeted crimes that have been happening, particularly in dairy shops. But we've got a government that has failed at addressing this, and we've got a criminal justice system that has actually failed to address the inequities that exist in society. Our prison population has reached a record level over 10,000. That is unacceptable. This is a symptom, and it's showing that actually when we have a prison system that is exploding, but somehow people keep feeling unsafe, the prison system and the justice system is not working. And for the Green Party, it's about having a holistic vision on justice. It's actually about looking at the root cause of crime, which often tends to be inequality and poverty. And so for us, in order to actually reduce crime, we need to be looking at beyond just knee-jerk reactions about, we do need to be looking at how we're going to actually, what is the role of the community and the police and society, and we do need to have a conversation about redefining that. But if we don't fix inequality, if we don't fix the housing crisis, we're never going to be able to reduce crime. So actually, let's prioritize looking at raising wages, at actually ending homelessness, because a lot of these hard decisions that criminals do, a lot of the time is out of necessity. So we're not going to be scapegoating migrants. We're not going to feed into this tension between particularly Māori and migrant communities, because I think as migrants, we need to be having a conversation about our relationship to Māori and Pacifica communities, because that is not fair when our prison population is considerably full of Māori and Pacifica to be just looking at those knee-jerk reactions. Let's go beyond that and look at the root cause of the issue. The Green Party will address that and will not feed into this kind of fear-mongering of our justice system. Thank you.
Well, I focused in my opening statement about the ACT Party's track record and future plans for making us safer, and the fact that the worst offenders are now spending longer in jail where they cannot hurt you, because that's the really safe way to deal with criminals, is to make sure that they are in jail. And we say if you commit 3 serious violent or sexual offences, then you're going away for a long time. And we want to extend that to burglary. If you do 3 burglaries, then you should go away for 3 years. And in the meantime, I actually agree with some of my opponents that we need to get smarter at rehabilitating prisoners. And it's a shame that over half the people in prison can't read, and over half the people in prison are back in prison within 4 years of release. It's not a coincidence. We need literacy in our prisons to reduce crime and keep us all safer. But finally, and I can't stress this enough, it's important that we get stronger together and stop abusing immigrant communities, as some of my political opponents do, and actually start to work together so that when the police are called by someone from the Chinese community, they understand. And when the Chinese community calls the police, they understand what to expect. And as a local electorate MP, I have organised meetings with the police for the Chinese community in order that we can build that understanding, because that's what we need. I support Judith Collins, who's going to give us 1,100 more police officers. That's long overdue. She's fought harder than anyone for that, and she's got no stronger supporter on this stage than me for getting those extra police officers. But having more police is not enough. We also need to build the connections between the Chinese community and the New Zealand police so that we can be stronger and
Thank you very
safer
much.
together.
Now let me introduce you the third topic on tourism industry. Exporting of dairy products was once New Zealand's pillar industry. Now it has been surpassed by tourism industry. 2019 is China-New Zealand Year of Tourism. And it is expected by then New Zealand tourism industry would make bigger contribution to New Zealand. Question for you here, what policies and plans do you have to cope with this challenge?
Hello. One of the things we announced in our policy already, in the immigration policy, that we're going to make visitors permit easy. You look at that China and India together are about 40% of the world population. They are one of the growing economy. And if you can't let them have more visitors, you look at visitors are growing quite a bit from India and China, but we can have grow a lot more. It can be a lot more visitors coming from these two countries and from other part of Asia. You know, economy going from Japan, South Korea. Like, see, future in the world going to be China and India. That's where the economy is growing. They're growing 7.5%, 8%. No other economy is growing that fast, right? So unless we give them visitors permit to those people easy, it's not going to happen. And next thing I would like to do is government spend a bit more money on advertising the tourism, help the tourism industry. Which government just to give some lollipops, 20 million here, 10 million here, like lollipops. Where tourism industry is like, I'm not exact figure, I think 13 or 15 billion. It's growing very fast. It'll be bigger than any other industry. And they're happy to give money to farmers, but they're not happy to give money to the tourism industry. And tourism industry gives so much money in the GST and other figures. You look at all the hotels, all the like restaurants and everything, but they don't give enough money to that. So what I like to do is, as a party, promote the tourism and make visitor permit easy. Thank you.
I want to talk about the growth of tourism, but also to link that to some broader issues in our economy. The strategy that the smart people in the New Zealand tourism industry have got is to move from volume, that's getting a whole lot of people to come here and to take a little bit of money off each of them, to value, which is to get a smaller number, or maybe not to just grow the number quite so much of people coming here, and to get more value out of those people. And that's a smart strategy for a whole range of reasons. One is it makes us wealthier as a country. If we offer services and experiences to people coming to New Zealand as tourists that people are prepared to pay more for, that will employ more New Zealanders and bring more wealth into our country. And that's a strategy that the Labour Party supports. And so as a part of that, we've got to put the infrastructure in place and give the industry support. But that tells a broader story about New Zealand's economy, actually, because that's what we need to do across the whole of the economy. One of the reasons that New Zealand, compared to places like Australia, has been getting relatively poorer now for about 40 years is because we've been focusing on volume stuff in our economy and not value stuff. The productivity in our economy is the fourth lowest in the OECD. This is the problem that goes back over 40 years over successive governments. I'm not particularly just pointing my finger at Judith and the current national government. But if we as a country want to be truly prosperous for our kids and our grandkids, we've got to get on top of that volume or value proposition, and we've got to make our economy more focused on value, producing goods and services that bring real wealth into our country instead of just selling off raw commodities, lots of milk and those kind of things that ultimately will not keep our economy competitive. So good question on the tourism. Let's focus on the value, but let's also do it across our whole economy. Thank you.
Well, I agree with a few of the things that Michael has said. By the way, we don't actually give money to farmers. They give money to us. It's called taxes. Farming is still a major part of New Zealand economy, and if you take tourism has now surpassed dairying as our #1 export, but dairying is part of our agricultural economy, and in fact all agriculture together is still the greatest of all of our exports. So we just need to remember that when we're all getting excited. So tourism is major for us because at the moment China is at 390,000 people visiting us last year from China, is now our second biggest market in terms of tourism. It is a huge potential for us, and it will continue to do so, to grow like that, as long as we continue to have infrastructure. We have people building hotels, the sorts of places that people want to stay in. One of the big ways of getting around some of the costs involved in that is actually to keep interest rates low, to reform the RMA, which we have been doing along with our parties and our coalition partners, but also to make sure is that New Zealand is seen as a safe destination. Despite all the talk tonight, New Zealand has recently rated as the 4th safest country in the World Peace Index, which actually I think is a pretty good thing. And you just have to look at the fact we are immigration positive by a significant degree. We choose who gets to come to live here. We're not like many other countries that export their people, not these days. Now we import people, and we are blessed with the fact that we are a great country to live in.
Hi everyone. I thought I'd better do it properly and do it in English. First, I'd like to thank the national government for making 2019 China-New Zealand Tourism Year. And I think that the Labour Party he missed the point. He wasn't actually answering the questions. But at the Māori Party, we have 2 policies. We have iwi rail, so when tourists come, they can take iwi rail, electric train, to the province so we can showcase our tangata whenua, our Māori cultures, who are the original people of this country, so we can showcase them to the world. 2 is we need to encourage small and medium enterprises in the province so that we can assist with Māori development. Thank you very much.
So people come into New Zealand as tourists for many reasons, but one of the very common denominators is our beautiful environment. So the Green Party is committed to protecting our rivers so that our tourists, when they come into this country and they swim in them, they don't get sick. We're also going to fund the Department of Conservation. So one of the things that tourists love to do in this country is go into our tracks, but because we have experienced a large surge of tourists, now more than ever, the lack of funding of the Department of Conservation by the national government is being exposed. So the Green Party will put a taonga levy, which is a very small levy on people coming in, to make sure that we can properly protect our beautiful tracks and native species. And I also want to touch on what Michael would say, which I agree on, regarding diversifying our economy, because while the dairy sector is still a very important part of our economy, the national government has relied on cheap exports, particularly based around kind of milk powder, and we should be looking at high-value dairy products and generally just diversifying our economy so that we're not relying on a really fragile product that could be easily overtaken by bigger markets. I do think New Zealand has a huge potential to create high-value products, and I think the time is now. Kia ora.
I don't think we need to tell you guys, but obviously tourism is really important to us. But also for two reasons. One, obviously people coming into New Zealand, but also us going overseas. One of the reasons I've managed to travel a bit in my time, I love travelling. It's great to go and experience other cultures, and it's great to have people coming here as well. And because we're so good at accepting people, having visitors come here, we get to travel to other countries as well. So that's a really positive thing. So tourism is really important for us. Obviously there's the financial benefit for it, but also it brings us closer together as well. I recently spent a bit of time overseas in Taipei, and working with some of the people there, you start to understand some of the cultures and things, and you can start to get closer with the people, and you can start to make connections. So tourism is really important for us. We do need to invest in our infrastructure though, particularly in our environment, in our tracks and places, things like that. And we also need to look after our birds as well. Some of our birds are seriously endangered. We need to invest in that. So some of that is investing in the Department of Conservation to give them the funds to protect our environment. So when people come to New Zealand to see our lovely clean green image, it's not just an image, it's a real thing. So that costs money, and so we need to invest in that. Thank you.
I think everyone here would agree that New Zealand's just got to be one of the most beautiful places in the world to live in. And that's what people appreciate when they come to see it. So I agree with what people have said about us investing in infrastructure. And that's like having enough toilets around New Zealand, so when people are in camper vans and going around New Zealand, they have the right ablutions, they feel safe, it can be clean. And all of that costs money. So I'm using a bit of a side one here to bring in our tax policy. We would like to introduce a new tax called the low transaction tax. And what it means is instead of having GST, which is 15% on all goods and services, every single transaction in New Zealand would be taxed at half of 1%. What that would mean, it'd be cheaper for people to come to New Zealand because they wouldn't be spending so much in GST, but we believe the intake we could get from that would be nearly 3 times what we get from GST at the moment. So every transaction you do gets taxed at half of 1%. Most New Zealanders would be better off with it, but it would catch every transaction from all the multinationals, all the big farming places, and New Zealand would be better off, we'd have more money for infrastructure, and we'd have cheaper rates for people coming here. So we believe that would be a great incentive for tourism.
Well, look, I mean, it shouldn't be surprising that the ACT Party is highly supportive of tourism. It is one of our greatest industries, and it brings so much richness to New Zealand from the people that visit and share their experiences, whether they be strangers, whether they be family or friends. We're very grateful that we are so well connected with the rest of the world, particularly through all of the new routes from all of the new airlines that have started flying direct from Auckland to China to various airports over the past 9 years. And I think that is something that we should be proud of and celebrate strongly. But what I would say is that success sometimes has its own problems. And there are now so many people coming to New Zealand that we haven't kept up with the infrastructure. We haven't built enough hotels. We don't have, in the case of the Department of Conservation, enough revenue to keep the tracks going. We don't have, in some places, enough roads in places such as Otago because there's so many people that want to go and view the beautiful parts of New Zealand that are on offer there. So the ACT Party says 2 things. First of all, we've got to cut back the red tape and regulation that makes it so hard to build hotels, so hard to build roads, so hard to develop the infrastructure that we require for more people to come here to New Zealand. And second of all, we need to ensure that our local councils have enough access to funds in order to support that infrastructure and for the tourism that occurs there. And our policy is that if the central government is going to take 15% of construction costs and GST, we should share half of that money with the local council to build the infrastructure, to facilitate the hotels and the tourism that makes this country richer, not just financially, but also in terms of cultural exchange. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your wonderful speech. Let's put our hands together one more time. I can see there are already many different views on different topics regarding immigration, crime, and tourism industry. In this part of the debate section, every party candidate has an opportunity to ask only one question to one of the other 7 candidates on the stage regarding their policies and opinions.
Each answer from the candidate being asked has a time limit of 2 minutes. Please start from candidate number 1.
And please seize this opportunity. You only can ask one question to one of the candidates.
Okay, so my question is to Michael Wood from Labor Party. And Michael, I don't believe that you agreed with what happened, but I would like to hear your view on the Labor Party's attack on people with Chinese-sounding names. That was something that really upset me, and it also was something I would never have expected from the Labor Party. And I know that you've now resiled from that, but how can you ever justify it as a Labor Party candidate?
Thanks for the question, Judith. In politics, you sometimes need to be really aware of the fact that the words that you use have an impact, and they can be used for good and they can sometimes hurt people. And sometimes that can happen when a politician means it, and sometimes it can happen when a politician doesn't mean to hurt people. And what Phil Twyford, who used that phrase, has said on numerous occasions since then, is that he sincerely regrets that did really hurt some people in the Chinese community. And we've expressed that in the Labor Party. I can think back not too far before that to a National Party cabinet minister who also used some words very unwisely in respect of the Chinese community and apologised for those, I believe, at the time. I'm thinking of Lockwood Smith. And so we've all got to be conscious of these things as politicians. And that was something that Phil Twyford said that he regretted. Where did that come from? It came out of a genuine issue, though. It came out of a genuine issue, which is that here in New Zealand, we had a government which was resisting bringing forward to the public information about the ownership of property in New Zealand. Simply refused to put that information in the public realm that was important for public debate. And that's something that we think is important for the debate around housing. As I said, in the course of that debate, Phil used some unwise words. He regretted those. I regret those, and I repeat that to you.
Never apologise to us.
Please do not interrupt. Thank you, Michael. And now we have Damien as our second candidate to ask question. Thank you.
Thank you. Just following on from the previous question, I guess my question is for the Green candidate. Is being that the Greens are so pro-immigration and wanting to engage with immigrants and things, how can you plan to be in government with Labour, who has a spotty record on immigration and race relations, and New Zealand First, who is not here for obvious reasons?
That's a really good question, thank you. So the answer to this is why you need to give your party vote to the Green Party, because only a party vote to the Green Party will stop New Zealand First from being part of a coalition government. We are committed to going into government with Labour, but the stronger our vote is, the more we can influence the decisions that are made in the next government. We definitely want to have a government that stands for migrants. And the reality is that National may well have to go with New Zealand First in the current polling. So, that could also be a reality. So I'd be interested later on to hear whether Judith Collins has a plan for that as well. Cheers.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, we have Mr. Roshan Noria from the New Zealand People's Party.
National has been government for the last 9 years, and especially in the last 4 years, crime has gone up by every year 10%. I got the statistics here if you want. I can give you the statistics. And it is fact. And you can see, every day you see news, but 40% of the news you can read any newspaper or you can go on any other news. Either a shop is robbed, or somebody is being hammered, or police is chasing some criminals, and some other accident because the fellow who's a criminal go and do another accident. That's a fact. You can say anything, but that's a statistic says the crime has gone up by every year 10%, right? And national government has taken 9 years to think that we're going to put more police. right? So I can't see what will they do in the next 9 years. They might have to think again. I'd like to ask Judith that what happened to the crime. Thank you.
Well, actually, you're wrong. And when you say what it's taken us 9 years, when we first came into government, when I was first Minister of Police, we put 600 extra police on the beat. We also have just announced earlier this year 1,125 extra police staff and 236 of those police officers in the Auckland region. It is simply not true, and we know that because we actually have the stats and we look at them all the time. But what is important, though, is to accept and to acknowledge the wonderful support that we have had on all of our law and order policies from United Future, from the Maori Party, and also from the ACT Party. Also, we have had a lot of support from Labour on areas where it was that we could agree on. Where we've never had any support on law and order is the Green Party. And the Green Party views crime is all about poverty. Actually, I think that's an insult to people who are poor. Most people who are poor do not commit crimes. Actually, most people who get attacked are often people who are attacked by either their family or by neighbours or whatever. Most people are. And I think it is an insult to link poverty and crime. It is absolutely wrong. There are plenty of white-collar criminals that I have seen in prison, and I can tell you it's nothing about crime, about poverty, it's all about greed.
Thank you very much. Now we have Mr. Michael Wood from New Zealand Labour Party.
My question is for our Māori Party candidate tonight. You guys have been part of the national-led government for the past 9 years, and you've indicated that you are going to look at the options at the election this year. And I'm keen to hear from you as a Māori Party candidate representing at this debate what your views are on that, given some of the issues that have come up tonight, given that we've got Māori home ownership at its lowest level in about 60 years, whether your preference is to continue supporting a national-led government or to look at a change of government.
Well, I can't make that decision because I only joined the party 2 months ago. So I can't really answer that efficiently. Well, my view doesn't matter, but I know for a fact that if the Labour government gets in, that's the end for for my Asian brother and sister out there. Yeah. Well, to start with, you talk about tourism. Well, it's not a very good look for Labour if you get into government and you say, hey, look, I don't really want you guys here. Right? Well, you said on your website, not in Chinese, by the way, so we can't read it, you see. You've got to read the fine print, see. You said, Andrew Little said, they want to reduce immigration by 20 or 30,000. Is that true or not?
What if you let me answer?
No, I asked you.
Stick a microphone in my face and then...
Well, no, I'm just saying that yes or no. Is that true or not?
Put a microphone in my face.
Well, you want to have the mic.
I explained Labour's immigration policy before, which is that we support immigration around about 40 to 50,000 people per year, which should be higher than it was most years under the current national government that the Māori Party has been a part of. We think that rebalances things. And actually the main reduction area that will come from is from the international students market, where we will have a crackdown on the low quality courses. We've got students who are being abused, cases of fraud and low quality courses. That's actually where most of the reduction will come from. And under Labour we'll still run an immigration policy that actually still has about the highest level of immigration of any country in New Zealand. I have no idea. No one can say what the coalition will be. And actually my question was to you, well, would you be part of a national-led coalition that might have New Zealand First as part of it? None of us can say.
So it doesn't really concern me. No, all I'm saying to you is that you want to reduce immigration. 他要减移民，这样子怎么样
Thank you very much. Please answer the question, and please don't ask question when it's not. You can ask when it's your turn.
question was simple, which is, do you prefer a national-led or Labour-led government? Effectively, you've taken 5 minutes and haven't answered that question.
No, and you haven't answered mine either.
You can ask this question once you return, okay, Mr. Cow?
So I'm finished? Yeah, I'm done?
Are you satisfied with this answer?
You
I
want me
haven't
to
heard
do
an
it in
answer, but
Chinese?
that's up to him, I guess.
I can do it in Chinese.
Every other candidate has answered the question. You haven't answered the question.
No, well, I can't make that decision. And I ask you a question. Are you going to be in Parliament with New Zealand First? It was
I've
racist.
answered the question that was asked to me. I asked you your view as a candidate. You haven't answered it.
Well, I can't make that decision, and I ask you whether you're going to be in bed with someone who is racist and want to get rid of immigrants. Winston Peter 不喜欢我们。
So if you're going to ask that question to me, you need to ask Judith it as well, because at the moment, we don't know what might happen after the election.
All right, well, I'd also like to ask Michael Wood a question. Michael, do you really think your explanation to this audience that the Chinese-sounding name scandal was just the misuse of some words? Let's be honest about what your party did. They went through the phone book, they went through the list of people that were buying houses, and they singled out the ones that had names that sounded Chinese. They didn't pick out people that had names like Seymour, even though I could be from England. They didn't pick out names that might be from India or South Africa. What they picked out was names that were Chinese sounding, and then they reported that that was a bad thing. That's what they tried to do. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't like when Lockwood Smith made one funny gaffe that he apologised for. It was a planned strategy of your party to make fun of Chinese people. Now I want to ask, here's what I want to ask, so here's my question. Do you apologise here tonight? Say sorry, because Jacinda Ardern said on the radio this morning that if people were offended, she would apologise. Well, Michael Wood, people are offended. Will you apologise?
Well, I'm so pleased that I'm getting so many questions tonight, an opportunity to talk about the issues. I've said very, very clearly that that was a comment that Phil Twyford expressed sincere regret for, and I relay that on behalf of the Labour Party as well. But here's the point. Here's the point. That issue came out of immense frustration, out of the fact that in this country, we have young people in this city who have to have $1 million.
So a bit of racism's okay if you're frustrated. Okay, you're not going to say sorry, thank you.
I haven't spoken over any of your answers. Show a bit of courtesy, please. Okay? Out of the immense frustration that in this country, the dream that all people in this country, with their Pākehā like me, with their Māori, whether they're Pacific, whether they're Chinese, whether they're Indian, from whatever culture, are being locked out of a housing market because of the fact that we have rampant speculation, because of the fact that we have 40,000 less houses than we need in Auckland at the moment. And what Phil Twyford did in terms of that particular issue was not the right way of going about it. We express our regret from that. But what we can have is we can have opposition parties who want to get hung up on that and keep bagging us, and they can do that if they want, or we can actually look at solutions to that housing crisis. And that's what I will do every single day between now and the election, because that's what actually matters to young New Zealanders who want to get a house and a decent start in life.
Well, if you really want to move on, the answer is simple. Say sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Michael Wood, and thank you, David Seymour. And you're only allowed to ask one question. And the next the next one we have is Mr. Witex Count from Maori Party.
大家同胞，对不起了，我要问那个工党的那个 Michael Wood 啊，等一下，等我，我有计划的，慢慢来，好，大家明白他的那个问题吗？他的问题是不明白啊。去年工党攻击我们，房价起80%的买家是有华人的名字的。我跟大家讲一个故事，我太太是洋人，改了姓了 ，Trudy Giles King。You get that, mate? Right? 他也是姓江的。去年我们也买了一套房子，这样他就一条棍打死整船人了，是吗？这样子大家应该认为他要不要讲对不起了？
Hi, Mr. Khan. As all our candidates don't speak Chinese, please.
No. I'm going to
ask
translate.
question.
I'm going to translate.
Thank you.
What Maori Party?
Thank you very much.
The Maori Party is an inclusive political party, all right? And you've got an audience full of Chinese that may not speak fluent English, so you've just
Thank you very
disadvantaged
much.
them. Look, my question to you is the same question, right? The Labour Party attack Asian, our frustration. 他讲他很不高兴，所以他就攻击我们了。See, my wife is European, okay? Her name is Trudy Jane Giles Kang, all right? So you've just accused a third-generation Irish of jacking up house prices. So are you going to say sorry to us and move on with it? Or we're going to drag this out all night?
The Labour Party's record of supporting diversity in our communities is second to none. It was the Labour Party that recognised the People's Republic of China. It was the Labour Party, the fourth Labour government, that basically overturned what was a white New Zealand immigration policy that we had until the late 1980s. And it was Labour that said we will be colourblind in terms of immigration coming into New Zealand. It was Labour that negotiated the free trade agreement with China. And it is Labour that has always been utterly committed to multiculturalism and a colourblind policy and harmony between people in this country. Okay? Now, from time to time, every party makes missteps. And I've acknowledged, and the Labour Party has acknowledged, a misstep in terms of the way that we dealt with that issue. Okay? You can choose to continue making political capital out of that, and every other candidate can tonight if you want to, if you think that's a productive use of our time. But I can tell you that in my role as Labour spokesperson for ethnic communities, I spend hours and hours and hours every single week working with ethnic communities here in Auckland, including our Chinese community, and I have to tell you, sir, that this is not the issue that consistently gets raised with me. Okay. What people in the communities talk to me about are the issues that affect them and their families. Decent jobs, good housing, crime, transport in our cities, and those are the things that I will focus on while acknowledging that we got that one wrong.
Okay. Well, basically, you haven't apologised, but when you talk about law and order, well, what have you done to the people of your community in terms of law and order? Do you just go and talk to them and make them feel better about it? Or are you actually bringing something real to the table?
Yeah, well, look, I'm happy to talk about that. So I can say that in my own
Sorry,
electorate.
your time is up.
It's a good question.
Next up, we have Ricardo Menendez March, candidate for Mount Roskill from the Green Party.
Cool. My question is to Judith Collins. So I want to preface the question by acknowledging that the Green Party doesn't believe that poverty is actually causing crime, is that the criminal justice system discriminates against the poor, Maori, Pacifica, and our migrant community. So I want to ask you, Judith, do you think that considering that Pacifica and Maori are overrepresented in our prisons and that our prison population is exploding, do you think that the criminal justice system is discriminating against Maori, Pacifica, and migrant communities? And if so, what are you going to do about it? And if not, why do you think they're overrepresented?
Well, actually, not all of the groups that you've just noted are overrepresented to the extent that you might think. For instance, Maori unfortunately are overrepresented in our prison system. In fact, 15% of New Zealand's population is Maori, and around 50% of the prison population is Maori. So there's a huge overrepresentation. And when you consider what people are in jail for, primarily it's violent crimes. And that is unfortunately around half of those are around family violence. So that is a major issue. In addition to that, you linked Pacific communities into that. Actually, that's not true. Pacific communities represent around 8% of the population, and they represent 11% of the prison population. So I think if you're going to say that, then you should get that right. And I actually do know that. So I think it is important. When you talk about discrimination, understand this. If someone beats their spouse or hurts their child, we do not discriminate in the criminal justice system. Actually, it is not okay for people to do that to their child, to be violent towards other people and towards their family, and actually the criminal justice system has to deal in a colourblind way with people. Unfortunately, if people have other offences, then actually that increases the sentences. I was the minister who worked with the ACT Party to bring in 3 strikes. I am actually really proud of that because it was all around violent crime. The people who are extremely violent people should be in prison and away from everyone else, because there they are less harm to society and actually their families are a lot safer.
Thank you very much. And now we have Mr. Leighton Baker from Conservative Party.
One of the Conservative Party's policies is introducing binding citizens-initiated referenda. And what that means is, in between elections, the citizens of New Zealand could take votes on issues that were really, really important to us as a nation. And so my question is to David Seymour, would you allow binding citizens-initiated referenda questions or just binding referenda on issues like euthanasia, the legalisation of cannabis and reducing the abortion protections?
So I think the question is, do you believe in binding citizens-initiated referenda? And it's always been a hobby horse of the Conservative Party. The difficulty with it is that it doesn't actually work. Because if you think about it, if they got into Parliament, they would have to try and negotiate with someone to pass a law. So there's 2 things that are highly unlikely to happen. But let's say that they did. And then Parliament would pass a law saying that it was going to follow the results of a referendum. Now, the only difficulty with that is that Parliament can change the law back if it doesn't want to follow the referendum. So it's one of those things that gets people excited, and it certainly gets the Conservative Party excited. They get excited about transaction taxes and gondolas and all sorts of things, and press secretaries sometimes. But the fact of the matter is that a binding citizens-initiated referenda would require a constitutional convention and a constitutional change in New Zealand, the likes of which we haven't seen since 1840, and we're still getting away from that one. So I commend Leighton Baker for putting his hand up and coming to Epsom and standing for Parliament, but I just think a few of his policies would do with a little bit more thinking through.
Thank you very much. Let's put our hands together to thank all the 8 candidates for their wonderful Q&As. And now they've asked their questions. It's now the turn for you guys to ask your questions. I hope everyone can seize this opportunity to raise your questions to the candidates.
And while we are doing the question and answer, we have also prepared a survey for the parties here. Please fill it in and our staff will come to collect it when you're finished. The results will be shown in our news and WeChat platform in the next few days. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And who's ready for the first question? Yep, over there.
Thank you. Okay, my question is for David Seymour. Yeah, as we all know, the ACT Party is focused on the safety issues, but I think in our community, many of us are facing the same problem. Yeah, the small cases are reported to the police, but the police often do not attend to us. So it makes us think it's not the place is not surrounding us. It's not surrounding us. So you said before, more police will join, but it won't make us feel safer. So what do you think? What's the plan of you to improve this situation?
So just in case it wasn't clear to anybody, the question was, often crimes are committed and smaller, more minor crimes don't get a response. And that's the right question. I think the answer to that is similar to what I said earlier. There need to be more police that you can report a crime to. And by the way, Michael Wood said there should be more police walking around. And the problem with that is that it's not the most efficient way to police. The most efficient way to police is to use technology to have police in cars that can get to crime scenes quickly rather than walking around a shopping centre where they have to run back to their car. So forget that idea for a second. But we need more police, and the current government that I support is bringing over 1,100 more police on the beat in the next 4 years. The next thing we need to do, and I know there's two parts to your question, more police helps, but those police have to be police officers who can connect with the Chinese community, who understand how the Chinese community are often victimised, and have the ability to be culturally sensitive to Chinese people's needs and wants so that they can serve that community. And so I've talked about what I've done in my electorate. I only represent one electorate out of 71, but in the Epsom electorate, we have organised meetings with the local police, with the leaders in the local Chinese community, in order to build more understanding, the police understanding the Chinese community understanding the police. And I think some of these 1,100 police officers are going to have to be Chinese-speaking police officers who understand the Chinese community and make the Chinese community feel confident and safe reporting crimes to the police and getting a response. So more cops and more Chinese-sensitive cops. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yep, that gentleman over there, can someone pass him the microphone? Can our staff pass him the microphone? Thank you.
各位大家好，我是代表新西兰华人的民安会，谢谢大家。我在这里要强调一点，大家都在强调犯罪，犯罪不是只有是打劫印度人的，就是杂货铺，印度人的那个什么，印度人的那个就是liquor shop or dairy corner or gas station。现在中国的留学生，你每天晚上你8点钟你不能走在路上。 这是一个发达国家吗？这是一个新西兰政府所谓对外宣传的一个世界上最安全的国家吗？我坚决反对。
Can I translate for him?
I ask my friend is 姜伟德先生帮我翻译一下。第二个，我想新西兰政府应该加强，应该很快去考虑改变新西兰的法律，因为这个法律已经是100多年以前的了，现在已经不合适了。 什么东西都能变，为什么这个法律不能变呢？到底是什么症结不能变新西兰的法律？谢谢。
I think he wants to ask you a question, Judith. Yeah. I'll translate. It's all right. See, I'm nice to you. Just. How would she know? Because I'm trustworthy. Look at this face. Well, my friend over there has belonged to an association with 200 members of his community. And their prime objective is to look at justice, law and order. He is saying that crime is not confined to the major crime, and he's concerned not only just for the dairy owners and the liquor store owners, he's also concerned about the overseas students not feeling safe in this country. I think he told me this afternoon that he was quite disgusted, which I can't speak, I can't take a side, but he was quite disgusted that when an overseas student was attack at Albert Park last year, you came out and said that you feel safe.
Thank you. Well, I'm very happy to say that we are a country where the then Minister of Police, now Minister of Revenue, can actually walk around the streets and no one actually attacks me. Okay, I understand I'm really scary and people might not want to, but actually that is almost unheard of in any country that anyone who has come to New Zealand comes from, almost. I mean, it is almost unheard of. And actually, when I look at students coming into New Zealand, sometimes they're going to be, if they are in places or if someone decides to attack them, let's not blame the victims, because it's not their fault. But the fact is that when you live in a country for a long time, you live in a city or a place, you tend to know where the crime spots are. And actually, New Zealand has just been rated by the World Peace Index as the 4th safest country in the world. So please remember that. There's a reason that people walk around the streets without bodyguards. There's a reason that members of Parliament, David and Michael, can walk around, and me, walk around streets without anybody attacking us. And it's because we do live in a very safe country. But actually, I believe one of the reasons that people become victimised is when you have parties, political parties, and other thought leaders basically giving permission for that behaviour. And that is a real problem, which is why we don't want to encourage racism and racist blaming of people who happen to come to New Zealand whose surname isn't something like Collins. That is really important, because otherwise it does give permission. There is also a lot of envy from some of the people that we're talking about who are criminals against people who seem to have more wealth than them. And that is also no excuse for that behaviour. But I'm happy to have these people locked up in jail. Last year, I got over $1 billion extra for more jail beds. There's a reason for that. I want them in jail because it keeps people safe.
There are two parts to his questions. Can I translate the second part? There are two parts to the question. Well, he wants to know after, if you do get into Parliament, which I think you will because you're such a wonderful minister, that what kind of legislation are you going to change to make this country safer?
Okay, so that's a really good question. So should the National Party be returned in such a way that we are part of another coalition to run the government, to lead the government, we will be in a position to particularly target youth crime, which is an area which we believe, although youth crime has come down, what we have seen is an increase in seriousness amongst a small group of young people. And these people are the ones who will kill, who will rape, who will attack people in dairies and shops or whatever, and they're extremely violent, and they come from very violent homes. And that's why we're putting a specific policy around getting them off the street and into some training, away from their families, away from all their influences and their friends. And if that doesn't work, these people will be in prison. And I make no apology, and nor does the government, for building more prison beds. There's a reason for that. We now have methamphetamine that started to come into this country in the late 1990s and continued all the way through. That is an extremely violent drug, and also synthetic cannabis. Those drugs are actually really behind a lot of the violence, plus, of course, families who are violent themselves towards their children.
Thank you very much. Please raise your hand if you have more questions. Can you please pass the microphone to this gentleman in the front here? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I ask a question to the Labour Party and the Green Party? There seems to be a competition between the two of you that who can increase the most social welfare. So my question would be, how are you planning to pay for it? Are you going to tax us more, or are you going to borrow more money, which add more debt to the New Zealand taxpayers, or you are planning to print more money from the Reserve Bank? So how are you planning to pay for the social welfare that you guys are promising? And by the way, the people has spoken, so please talk to your campaign manager, Phil Twyford, that we would like to hear himself apologize because he was the one who made those comments. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for your question. The Labour Party doesn't have any policy to increase the total amount of money we spend on social welfare. It also depends what you mean by what we spend on social welfare. So, for example, the biggest component of social welfare expenditure is the money that we pay for people on New Zealand superannuation, our pensioners over the age of 65. What the Labour Party actually supports is as many people as possible being in gainful employment, being able to support themselves and their families, and being able to get ahead. And so under the last Labour government, we actually got unemployment down to 3.6%, the lowest it has been in about the last 35 years, and lower than it has been under this government. We had fewer people unemployed and receiving social welfare assistance for that reason than we have under the current national government. And that is something that we would like to get back to. But what I would say in terms of Labour's expenditure plans is that we've actually got to invest in the right things. And so at the moment, New Zealand's a great country. I just want to say that from the outset. We've got a lot of good things going for us. But we have got some real problems. We've got real problems in housing. We need to invest more in health and education. We've got to invest more in infrastructure so that we don't have massive congestion going through our biggest city. And when I see those problems, and I look at the choices that government has, and I say, should I be giving myself as a politician a tax cut, or should I be investing in those public services and that infrastructure? The Labour Party believes that New Zealand as a country will get more benefit out of that investment in public services and infrastructure than in tax cuts. And that is one of the real differences that is on the table at this election that people will be able to have a look at and make a decision on. But I absolutely stand by Labour's record of fiscal prudence. We were the government for 9 years and we run 9 surpluses. Not a single deficit in the entire time Labour was in government last time. And that's what you'll have under the next Labour government as well as getting unemployment down. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to have a last question from our audience.
The man at the back. Yeah.
Okay, can someone pass him the microphone, please? Thank you.
Thank you for giving me the chance. The question is about the crime. I'm taking care of a little girl, 12 years old, caregiver. I was traveling one night when I was in Shanghai. And she called me over the phone and she said, help. I said, what? She said, one of my classmates is being targeted by someone. And he was walking in Epsom. If someone is saying that this city has a blind spot that people should know that we should not get into, like Epsom, like Albany Westfield Mall, and we should not think this country is the safest country in the world. And that is the comment I want to make. And I want to know exactly, regardless of this political agenda, do the parties in power or not in power, do you think this issue is an issue? Or you think this is a minority, only cared by minority, Chinese, Maori, or other Indian? Is it a real issue that on your table you think about it? Or it is a topic that you use for political reasons? Please, anybody could answer. Thank you.
Well, 同胞，这个是很重要的问题，这个是很严重的问题。Well, at the Māori Party, we care so much about security. No, hang on. I care so much about security. I am personally going to purchase a vehicle, signwrite it with Māori Party East, and I'm going to I am in the process of recruiting a Māori warden from a guy called George Ngātai, who is a community leader. So within 1 week, there will be one Māori warden with a patrol car, sign written with Māori Warden East, with another support person on the road in East Auckland. That's how much I care about justice, law and order. I say justice, law and order because let's not forget about justice. And poverty is linked with crime. And I'd just like to address that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.
Well, can I address your party, sir? Your question. As the only person on the stage that can say that their party has gone into Parliament and campaigned on changing the law to make New Zealand safer. And ACT has done that in 3 strikes. And can I also say to you, as I said earlier, there's 3 parties in the stage, some of which I agree with, some of which I disagree with, who actually do the hard yards and are available to the Chinese community and show up to Chinese New Year and events around the calendar, and who, in my case, employ a Chinese-speaking electorate agent in my electorate office so we can connect with the Chinese community. So I appreciate that there are serious problems, and I appreciate that they affect the Chinese community probably more than anyone else for reasons that have been discussed tonight. But if anybody doubts that the ACT Party is heavily committed to the Chinese community and the issue of greater public safety, then you just have to ask yourself, not what we say we've done, but what we have done. And we've been there for the Chinese community every day of the week, every week of the year for the last decade. Thank you.
I know we are new into the political system, but one of the issues we have raised in our policies is the law and order. Because that is very important to all New Zealanders. Okay, it's important to some of the Asians who have been targeted specifically, but still when you talk a better law and order, that affects everybody. Right? So what we have done is announce specifically that we're going to have more police. See, it's when you're talking 3 strikes, what we want not to happen the thing. We don't want crime to happen. If you already done crime 3 times, that's too late. You already robbed 3 shops, or you already hurt 3 people. So what we want to do, deterrent, so that doesn't happen. That's the main issue. And then we want to do more rehabilitation. Right? It's very good to say, I know probably worse is better. I mean, what you're saying, bad is better than the worse. That's what they're talking. Because the crime in a national party government, led government, in the last, especially in 4 years, has gone bad to worse. Right? So what we're going to say, we're going to change that thing. So we'll bring the crime down and make the crime deterrent. That's what we're going to do. Thank you.
David, Michael and I are all electorate MPs in Auckland. David in Epsom, Michael in Mount Roskill, and me in Papakura. These are all areas with very diverse populations, and one of the issues that I know we all care about hugely, is the issue about law and order and crime. One of the things that the police have done over the last 8-10 years is to increase diversity of the police workforce. For instance, police, with part of the extra funding they're getting, are bringing in more ethnic liaison officers who are all police officers to work with the ethnic minority communities, including Chinese, obviously, as part of that. The New Zealand Police Force is now incredibly ethnically diverse, and particularly, compared to even 10 years ago. But actually, one of the things that I'd say to people is if you feel in danger, you don't wait for the daytime to go and talk to the police, you ring 111 on your phone. Because the police often feel and find that sometimes people who are victimised don't want to ring the police. Because particularly if people come from countries or are used to where you don't actually contact the police, in New Zealand, the police, you can contact them straight away. 111 is what you call. If you are in danger or you feel in danger, you should do that. That is what all of us who have grown up in New Zealand would do. And the reason is, if they don't know about it, they can't do anything about it. But please do that, and that's the big message I'd like to put out to all of the Chinese community in New Zealand, is in danger, 111. Fearful for yourself, your property, or or someone else with you, 111. Do that, because they will get there. Police are currently attending 96% of all burglaries within 48 hours, and most of those within the first 24 hours. And that happens because people are ringing them. If you're burgled and you don't ring, police can't know about it, so please do that.
Well, who would like to ring the police and say that, to report a crime, and say that something's been stolen, and if they come without mentioning Judith Cullen,
no, I said
I'll
if you're
give
in
my
danger.
vote to the National Party. Anyone want to have a go? Call the police now, please. Please. She just call 111.
I think it is important to not take what I've said and then change it. to suit a person. So I think it is fair to say if you are in danger, or there's a danger to you or someone else, you ring 111. And actually burglaries are not 111 unless the burglar is there. But please do report crime and please ring police if you feel in danger.
Sue, what I want to say to you is that it's my belief that every single person in this country, whether they're at home, whether they're on the street, whether they're at work or in a park, deserves to feel safe. And that is one of the foundations of a decent society. And we've got to work towards it. No single one of us up here should come here and tell you that we've got a single policy that will fix it all, because that would be absolute nonsense. We all know that this issue is far more complicated than that. So if any politician ever says to you, I'll do this, particularly if they're trying to sound tough, you know that they're just making political lines. It's absolute nonsense. This issue is a complicated one, and we've all got a duty to treat it seriously. The biggest thing that I want to focus on is actually stopping the crime occurring in the first place, okay? So it's all very well to talk about building more prisons. It's all very well to talk about sending the kids down to Wairua or whatever, but actually it's far better if we take action to ensure that the shops are not being robbed in the first place. Take action to ensure that the people in the parks are not being attacked in the first place. That's what we should be focused on. Now, one of the things that we absolutely know is that if our young people have got work, if they've got a future ahead of them, and if they've got a bit of hope, they are far, far less likely to get drawn into the gangs that the Minister rightly identifies as one of the absolute sources of the worst kind of crimes in our society. They are far more likely to go into a productive society rather than going down the criminal track. And that is one of the things that the Labour Party will be focused on. We'll put more police on the beat. We do believe that it's better to have more police at the local shopping centres and town centres, but we'll actually get those young people into education and work. At the moment, we've got 75,000 young people not in education, not in training, and not in work. And that is a ticking time bomb, and that will mean more crime. We've got a plan, instead of playing the dole to those young people, to take that dole money and give it to an employer to give that young person an apprenticeship so that they get into work, so that they have a future ahead of them and they have some pride instead of thinking that going into crime is the easy route. In the long run, those are the policies that will keep all of us safer and mean we don't have to build more prisons. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thanks everyone for your questions, and equal thanks to the candidates for your brilliant answers. Now we have arrived at the last session of tonight's debate, and candidate now can give your summaries in order, and you have 2 minutes. Thank you very much.
All right, well, first off, I'd like to thank everyone for being a great audience tonight. Thank you very much. You should give yourselves a round of applause, but make it short. So we have also had really good debate tonight. The big issues for us, and we know the Chinese communities is very focused on this, law and order, but by the way, tax. We're the party that wants to bring you tax cuts. I don't want to mess around with GST. You know why? It helps to keep the taxes low, because GST is paid by everybody, whether they're in legal employment, criminals, everybody, visitors, everybody. It now accounts for 32% of our tax take. If I start messing around with GST, I'm sorry, but we have to put the tax rates up. And I want to bring them down even further. And I also think too, law and order is a big issue for us. That's why we're putting the extra police on the beat. And it's great to hear other parties supporting that as well. It is really important too that we look at the families and do what we can. And we are doing quite a lot of work around it, where these kids come from. Kids, unfortunately, don't just join gangs, mostly they're born into it, and that's the big problem.
Thank you, everybody. First, I want to thank you all for coming out tonight on what is a slightly cold evening. Thank you to our hosts, to our sponsors as well, for having us tonight, for engaging in this debate. There's been a lot of good discussion this evening. Got a little bit heated there at times. There's some really important issues that I think we need to address, and it's good that people are engaged and asking the tough questions, because this next government is going to make some big decisions about where we're heading. And it's not just going to impact us, it's going to impact the future generations as well. So we need to start thinking about the decisions that we're making and how we're going to affect our future generations. So I think when you're looking at that, you need to look at the parties, not just about what they're telling you tonight and what they're telling you in the next 6 weeks. You need to look back. What have they been doing for the last, not just the last 9 years, but the 15 years, the 20 years before that as well. Some of the parties up here have got some reasonably good policies on immigration, which is great, but in the last 9 months, 12 months, they've had some pretty spotty records on race and on immigration. So I think you have to ask those parties the tough questions and say, you've changed your minds now, which is good, but can we trust you? Are you just going to change your mind again when you think you can get some more votes? So talk to the parties, find out what they've been doing, what they're actually achieving. United Future, we're proud of what we've achieved. We've worked with National for the last 9 years, but we worked previously with Labour as well, and we've worked with the Greens, the Māori Party and ACT to get things done. So we've got a record of delivering. And Peter Dunn, our party leader, does that because he's really good at working with people, identifying solutions, and he's also, David, he's written 2 books, so you're behind. When you vote this year, remember you've got 2 votes. Your party vote is the one that will decide the type of government you've got. So think about the type of government that you want to get, one that focuses on families, that has a focus on environment, but also on communities, strong, tolerant and safe communities. So you need to party vote United Future. Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to thank the host and then all the candidates, all the people who have come here. They have spent their time. And plus, I'd like to thank all of you. And I think we had a good debate. But I'd just like to say again about the New Zealand People's Party. We're new, but it can be done. If you give us 150,000 votes, we have announced 3 policies, which is important for every New Zealander: immigration, law and order, and housing. How many people are struggling for first home buyers? People are struggling to get 200,000 deposit. That's not done by you people, that's done by the national government. The price of the house nearly double in 9 years. It's not your fault, it's done fault by the government, right? But we'll fix it that. We will make sure you get houses of your own, especially the first home buyers, right? So we need, New Zealand People's Party needs, you got 2 votes, you get 2 votes. One is party vote, one candidate vote. We haven't stood any candidate, we're looking for party vote. You give us a party vote, and I can assure you that what we have said, we'll do it. Thank you.
I want to thank everyone first, candidates and everyone who's come here for a really good debate, a good rigorous debate in which good questions have been asked, and I hope you've got some of the answers that will help you make your choice. Elections are always about the future. That's what it should be focused on. What actually is the vision for the future that each party has? That's what it's about. It's all we should be focused on. And the vision for the future that the Labour Party is putting forward is one that is about all of us having shared prosperity in this country. It is about recognising the fact that New Zealand is one of the best countries in the world, but that we've got some issues that we can deal with to give every single person opportunity and to help them reach their potential in life. And so it's about things like making sure that every person in our country does feel safe through things like adequately resourcing our police and giving young people the education and the job opportunities that they need. It's about things like making sure that every single New Zealander has a decent house and can afford the dream of home ownership. In this city, in this country, we're wealthy enough that we should not have people sleeping on the street. And we should be able to say to every single 20 or 30-year-old who goes out and works hard that if you do that and you save up a reasonable amount of money, you should be able to afford a house to live in this city. This should be a country in which we have the best education system in the world at every single level. Early childhood education, primary, secondary and university. And if we want to do that, we need to put the right investment into our education system. The same goes for our health system. We shouldn't have people waiting on the waiting list. This should be a country in which every person can have the dignity of having the health care that they need without worrying about the cost and without having to wait for too long. And we should have a first world public transport system in this country. Under Jacinda Ardern, with the new leadership, the new ideas that she's got, those are the things, that's the future that the new Labour government will deliver. We're really proud of the relationship that we've built across our communities in New Zealand, and we look forward to building as much support as we can in this campaign for a really positive change for all people in our country. Thank you for your time tonight.
Well, look, I just want to thank my supporters who have come along. And folks, thank you. We won this debate. Why? Because the ACT Party is the only party that can say it's been with the Chinese community through thick and thin for 15 years. We're the only party that can say that we've been consistently pro-immigration. Not maybe we are, maybe we're not. We've always been in favour of immigration and the rights of immigrants. And when it's come down to actually doing something about crime, we've actually done it. So that is the message from the ACT Party. We don't just talk about it. We don't just take ethnic communities for granted. We actually become part of them and work with them. And that's why we've won this debate, and that's why I hope that many of you who agree will be giving your party vote to the ACT Party on the 23rd of September this year. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone. You all know what I stand for, you know what I do, so please give your vote to me in botany. 同胞大家好，大家知道我都是比较喜欢玩笑了，所以第一件事情我要跟我们的 MP 道歉。Sorry, mate. I've just said that I'd like to apologise to you if I've overstepped the line, but I do like an apology from Phil, if possible. Okay. Secondly, I like to state the record straight that not only that I know how to read, I have also published internationally in the British Journal of Clinical Pharmacology as a pharmacist, and I've written 2 books. So the fact that he told me that maybe I'm Asian.
Anyone read them?
Yeah, of course. It's in all the library.
Oh, you can't count your mum.
Well, basically, like, just because I'm Asian, so, you know, not that I can't read a book, but anyway. Well, anyway, what I like to do is I like everyone to remember Judith Collins is the Minister of Ethnic Affairs, and she's given us $520,000 in the last budget. So what I like everyone to do, if the National Party or Judith Collins has get elected and go into Parliament, please ask her to give us more money.
Kia ora, I want to acknowledge all of you for coming and engaging in politics, because your vote is really important and your participation in the political system is even more so. I also want to point out that some of the behavior and attitudes in this debate is one of the reasons why so many of my young peers are really put off politics. And for us, the Green Party, we want to focus on the real issues. We want to be talking about how we're actually going to clean up our environment and how we're going to end poverty in this country. So let's talk about raising wages, let's talk about funding our public services, having world-class public transport in this country. We're going to be working to changing the government with the Labour Party, and we're going to create a country where nobody is homeless, where everybody gets access to safe, warm, dry homes, and where we actually tackle the racism, the real racism that exists in our society that is fueling these attacks in so many of our communities. I'm here to talk about the real issues. I'm not here to pander to you. I'm not here to tell you what you want to hear when I'm in this forum and when I'm in another forum to tell you something completely different. Let's talk about the real issues. Let's change the government. Kia ora.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming tonight. It's been great. Thank you very much for your time. I just want to point out a few things about the Conservative Party. We're a party of people that are grassroots people. 2 of our board members actually work on the front line with at-risk youth. They're the ones that are saying to us, we need to change the policy if we're going to change the culture in New Zealand and if we're going to reduce crime. They're on the street, they've been on the streets for 15 years, working with some of New Zealand's hardest youth, and they're the ones that are saying, if we don't address what's happening in the family, we will not get on top of crime. The Conservative Party has just I've given you some practical solutions tonight. That's what we're about, practical solutions to the problems facing New Zealand today. That's why we want to be part of the next government, because we can be part of a conversation that actually brings solutions and not just talking about the issues. We would appreciate your support this year. I think there's some other things you need to acknowledge this year. After the election, there will be a discussion and a vote on euthanasia. We would like that to be up to the citizens of New Zealand to choose whether euthanasia is legal in New Zealand through binding referenda. We do not think it's the role of 63 MPs to choose. We believe it's the role of all New Zealanders to have a say on social issues, like whether or not we should legalise cannabis, like whether or not we should legalise euthanasia. We believe it's your role to choose, and we'd like to give you that power and authority. So vote for the Conservative Party this year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. In the past few hours, we've just witnessed such an intense debate here. I believe each party candidate has fully expressed the party's views and policies, and all of us have gained more insight in this year's New Zealand general election.
Yes, as when voters are better informed about the different parties' policies, they can make more sensible decisions when casting the ballots. And this is how New Zealand residents should exercise their voting rights and participate in determining the policies of New Zealand in the next 3 years.
Actually, as a normal resident myself, and for all of us, the most important thing is not which party comes to power. What we actually concern is whether the governing party can really live to our expectations.
Now, with the New Zealand General Election 2017 just around the corner, under the principles of fairness and justice, we anticipate the arrival of a new government that effectively unites different nationalities and promotes the harmonious development of New Zealand society.
And now that's the end of the general debate tonight. A big thank you to everyone for everyone of your support and participation. Let's welcome the host, co-host, and sponsors to come up to the stage to have a group photo with the candidates. Thank you.
Thank you.